Good morning, everyone. So, typically this is the time of the day when I wake up. So I'm a little lost right now. But hopefully in the next 5-7 minutes I'll be fine and back to my usual self. I never really I have a very honest confession to make. I keep coming to Goa. I've been coming to Goa for the last 15 years, and every year I come twice, thrice. There are years I've come to Goa 6-7 times as well. But I never thought that a day would come when I would talk about the Indian economy in Goa. I mean, there is, it's a very difficult connection to make. So I'd like to thank the International Center Goa and Dr. Pushkar for inviting me to talk and give a public lecture here. And I didn't know that it was so difficult to give a public lecture at International Center Goa, given that this is the first one happening in 6 months. So I sort of, it feels very exclusive. So thank you once again for that. So I'll start with a few disclaimers, and these are important disclaimers to make, especially because the general tendency is to think that economics has all the answers. It doesn't. So the first disclaimer I'd like to make is that I'll try, I can't avoid throwing numbers at you because economics largely is about numbers, but I'll try throwing as few numbers at you as is possible, because I don't want you guys to miss the wood for the trees. Okay. So what is more important is to understand the bigger picture on the topic, growth interrupted and how India's economy can grow again, than get into the minutest detail and then argue about it. The second disclaimer I wanted to make is that economics is not a science. Okay, a lot of economists try to pass it off as a science, and that's because over the last 60-70 years, a lot of mathematicians have entered economics, and maths is very, very definitive. When you write an equation, y is equal to mx plus c. So if you know the values of the variables m, x and c, the value of y will be the value of y. I mean, it won't change. Economics that way is not definitive. Hence, if you come across an economist who is talking in a very, very definitive sort of way, without any ifs and buts, be very, very wary of him. There is, as I said, economics is not a science. The other thing I basically wanted to say here is essentially, I wanted to sort of recite a small Urdu couplet, and I see people here in the audience who would probably not understand Hindustani, the language that gets spoken all across northern and eastern India. So I'll first recite the couplet and then I'll translate it into English as well. Of course, it will be a loose translation because I'm really not a poet. So this is from one of my favorite Urdu poets. His name is Nida Fazli. He died a few years back, and he says that कभी कभी यूं भी हमने अपने जी को बहलाया है, कि कभी कभी यूं भी हमने अपने जी को बहलाया है, जिन बातों को खुद ना समझें औरों को समझाया है. So what that basically means is, and this is a very crude translation of what I just said, that sometimes I have so entertained myself that I have explained things to others which I haven't understood myself. Okay, so the moral of the story here is that if you understand what I will have to say, well and good. If you don't, I hope you at least understood the couplet. So. Okay. Right. So now, yes. Can we just? Yeah. As you would probably have understood by now, my one big love in life is Urdu poetry, other than, of course, economics and things that I do to make a living. And the tragedy with Urdu poetry is that it's been bracketed, and it's been bracketed very, very badly. We tend to think of Urdu poetry only, on things like unrequited love, separation of, hearts, and stuff like that. I mean, very, very basically, love and its various forms. But that's not the case. I mean, Urdu poetry just goes beyond, just love and its various dimensions. And I would like to start this talk with a poem, with again a very small couplet by a gentleman called Javed Akhtar. For people who grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, he is a Hindi film scriptwriter who, among other movies, also wrote Sholay, which was perhaps the biggest Hindi film hit of all time. And for the millennials in the audience, he is Farhan Akhtar's father. So, I mean, in case you didn't know. And so here's the couplet. So the interesting thing is, Mr. Akhtar has obviously written quite a lot, and he took to writing poetry very late in life, only after his father, who was also a poet, died. And so this is how it goes, and I'll again translate it into English. कि सबका खुशी से फासला एक कदम है, सबका खुशी से फासला एक कदम है, हर घर में बस एक ही कमरा कम है. Okay, so which essentially means that everybody is just one step away from happiness. Every home has just one room less. So this is where if you were to ask me, Urdu poetry meets economics. Okay, yeah. I mean, and why do I say that? I say that primarily because economics. Because this couplet talks about the economic aspirations of human beings, right? कि सबका खुशी से फासला एक कदम है, हर घर में बस एक ही कमरा कम है. Now, if you do not believe me, I'll read out something that an economist called David Friedman, son of a very, very famous economist called Milton Friedman, writes in this book called Hidden Order. And I quote, "Most of us believe in our hearts that all we need, all any reasonable person needs, is a little more than we have." Okay, this is exactly what Javed Akhtar has said. Now, obviously, the question is who plagiarized whom. So, no one did. I mean, these are independent thoughts that two people got at different points of time, but very, very similar in nature. But one is Urdu poetry, the other is economics. Now, the point is, human beings, you, me, everyone, strive for a little more than we have. So if we have a house, we probably want a bigger house with probably one more room in a better locality. If we have a car, we probably want a bigger car with more legroom, better engine, or the various dimensions on which cars get bought. If we take a domestic holiday every year to, let's say, we come to Goa, maybe the next year we want to go to Bali, right? So we all have these aspirations where we want a little bit better for ourselves, and that is how economics works. But just wanting more is not enough, because when you want more, you need money to pay for that want, right? So I stay in this place called Prabhadevi, which is bang in the middle of Mumbai, what we call central Mumbai, and what at one point of time used to be the heart of capitalism and free market in India, because all of India's textile mills were based in central Mumbai. Now we have malls all across. The textile mills have been destroyed. The city's laborers have been destroyed, and we have malls and buildings built on top of what used to be textile mills. Now, so there are these fancy, buildings in which flats cost rupees 10 crore or more. Now, I may want one of those flats, but I know for a fact that at least in this life, I will never have the money to buy one. Okay, and I don't believe in afterlife. So, So the point is, yes, I may want that flat, but I really don't have the money to buy that flat. And without money, it just doesn't make any sense, right? So things are not free and things need to be paid for. And in order to pay for anything, we need money. And money comes when, when we are employed, when we do something, when we are a part of an economic activity, then we earn an income, okay? So that was the connection that I was trying to make. I mean, in case you sort of walked in right now and you were wondering that this was supposed to be a lecture on economics, and here's this guy, talking about Urdu poetry and Mumbai real estate and, whatnot. So the point I wanted to make was this, that it's all, you may have a want, but unless you are making enough money to fulfill that want, there's no point in having that want, right? Now I just want you guys to hold this thought, because I'll go off in a totally different dimension, and we'll come back to this thought later again in the talk. Now I wanted to talk a little about the Great Depression of 1929. Okay, so the Great Depression was essentially a depression. Now, depression is basically a state of the economy where the economic growth is just collapsed. I mean, where basically the economy is contracting, and it's contracting big time. So that is what we call a depression. So in October 1929, the New York Stock Exchange basically started to fall, and there was a huge collapse, and people lost a lot of money in the process.